Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. My name's Ryan Blake, I'm the founder and CEO of Extreme Sports Performance. In this 14th episode, I'm going to be speaking to Nick Grantham. Nick is a performance enhancement specialist in a wide range of sports. I'll be asking him the questions I ask all my guests. Who he is, what he does, where has he come from and what has he done along the way. What are the key moments from his career so far? What are his top areas of interest? What are the most valuable things he's learnt? Who are his top influences? What are his top resources for information? What are his top sports performance exercises or drills? What are his top pieces of advice in life, exercise and or sport? And finally, where can people find him? We freestyle a little bit as usual in between questions and towards the end. As always, really enjoyed recording this one. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Here we go. So, Nick, welcome to the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us on, Ryan. Thanks for the invitation.
Pleasure. So, you've had quite an extensive career and done lots of things in this field and profession. Would you mind just giving us, for those who don't know, just a brief summary of what you've done and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, I think ultimately I'm a specialist generalist, which is probably why I've been able to work across such a wide variety of sports and different environments. So going right back, I left school very early at 16 and went off into the financial services industry. I was really bad at that, working in banking and insurance, and then found my way through night school and university into the world of sport, which was ultimately, you know, it is fantastic because you just get to work and continue sort of your athletic career through others. So started working in sport. My first role, very fortunately, was with the GB gymnastics team at Lilleshall. That was 97. And then I worked there for a period of time before committing what my then boss said was career suicide, because at that time, strength and conditioning didn't exist. I was working as a sports scientist, and I left to join the England netball team as a strength and conditioning coach, probably one of the first advertised strength and conditioning roles within the UK. So I spent time there really learning my trade as an S&C coach. I loved it. Was very fortunate to probably have the best coach I've ever worked with and a fantastic performance director as well, one of the best performance directors I've worked with in netball. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have left netball had it not been a sport with relatively few opportunities outside of England, really. You know, maybe 5 teams that are competitive, and I was already working with England, and to move would be either New Zealand, Australia, or maybe South Africa. So that wasn't really an option for me. The English Institute of Sport came into being around the same sort of time, and I think I was employee number 5 in the English Institute of Sport, and I went to work at in the West Midlands area, where I headed up the strength and conditioning team for the EIS in the West Midlands, and that's really where I was afforded the opportunity to work across a lot of different sports, and that really was a fantastic opportunity for me. I worked there for a number of years, and then kind of the way that the organisation was evolving. It was still a young organisation, and there weren't really many opportunities to advance as a coach without finding yourself behind a desk doing a lot of admin and paperwork. And I was still young and wanted to coach. So I moved to the northeast, a place I said I'd never live, with my wife and her family are from up this neck of the woods, and relocated to Newcastle upon Tyne, where I've worked for the last to get on for 12 years actually now, as a independent consultant. And again, that's afforded me opportunities to work with teams like Great Britain women's basketball in the Olympics, in the build-up to Olympics for 2012, professional football teams, international football teams, as well as more recently joining the weird and wacky world of action sports and working with a professional downhill mountain bike team. So I'm very lucky, really. I'm not sure it was part of any great plan, but I'm certainly enjoying the ride.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that. That's really diverse and really interesting history. I'm probably going to come back to the ask a few more questions about the downhill mountain bikers a bit later, if that's all right, because quite a lot of our listeners are extreme sports or action sports athletes.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's hard to choose three, but what would you say, you don't have to choose three, but what would you say would be the key moments from your career so far over that time span?
I think if I was to break it down to three, I think the first one is, I remember a conversation with my wife, who was at the time my girlfriend when I was at university, and there was two jobs that were advertised, one for the British Olympic Medical Centre and one for the Lilleshall Sports Injury and Human Performance Clinic. And I was a graduate, and I thought about putting in for the jobs, and I was having a bit of a crisis of confidence, and my wife just said, well, just do it. Just apply for them. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're either going to get knocked back or you're going to get called for interview. Now, the BOMC knocked me back. They took Steve Ingham, which was probably a far better choice to take Steve on. He was far better suited to that role, but I was fortunate to get interviewed at Lilleshall and was offered the opportunity to work with GB Gymnastics, and purely because my wife said, just do it. And I think that's been a common theme throughout my career now, and maybe something we talk about later.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It's just, I say yes to stuff, and then I'll figure out how we shoehorn that into the day and the week and make it work. And 9 times out of 10, it does work. So I think that's probably the first one, Ryan. I think the second key moment would be across a range of sports and a range of athletes. I think the first one was, again, those times working with gymnastics, was working with a gymnast who had one crack at the Olympics in Sydney and 6 weeks out broke his hand, and I was part of a support team to help him get back to full fitness. And I think that was the first sort of broken biscuit that I worked with. And I'd say to people, I like working with broken biscuits now. I can think of numerous occasions. Again, London 2012, one of our women's basketball players tore her MCL 6 weeks out from the Olympics. Getting her back into full fitness to compete at that was a major achievement. And then, going through to working with people like Rachel and G Atherton, G dislocating his hip and being written off by everybody on social media, and within that world has not been able to make it back. And then he comes back and does the business at Lebrest last year. And Rachel, dislocated her shoulder at Fort William, and again losing that winning streak. She didn't lose it; she crashed, so no one beat her. And then breaking her collarbone the night before the World Championships. But working with her to come back and then regain those titles last year. So I think a common thread with all the teams and athletes I work with is I like working with the underdog, people that have been written off, and I think that's where my skill set is of benefit. And then the final one really is go back to the performance director at England Netball. I think she was really influential, and when I was looking at CPD, she said, you don't need to do more S&C courses, Nick, you need to go on a management course. And I thought she was nuts at the time, but she was absolutely right. So sending me on an open university management course was incredibly influential and useful, and I think that was then also backed up by my time at the IS, where a group of us made some interesting choices as young thrusters in the world of S&C, and it came back to bite us a little bit. And as a result, which is actually a benefit, as a result, we were all sent on a management course for a year. And at the time, I remember sitting in the first session in Manchester with a face like a slapped arse because I really didn't want to be there. But actually, it was one of the best learning experiences I had over that 12 months, and I think it made me a better coach, but also a better manager and of people.
Fantastic. And do you feel that the skills that you learn on that management course, do you feel that that's something that sticks with you now and you can dip into on a daily basis? Yeah,
absolutely. I think everyone goes through phases of learning within your career, and you see this a lot, and often people ask you what books you're reading, and you get everyone on social media putting up, these cool books that are sort of management and communication, and certainly where I'm at the moment, I still have a lot of that I read and look around, as well as the technical information. But I think at certain points in your career, you need to overload on the technical aspect. But then once you start wanting to either be an influential member of a team or influence members within your team, you've got to look at those skills of leading and managing up and down, sometimes subtly from sort of within, and communicating. And I think it's no surprise that of late, pretty much every conference that I've attended, whilst there's been a lot of technical information that's been disseminated, I think you are also getting a lot of people now recognising the interactions and the skills that are required by practitioners, because I think we're churning out some really intelligent practitioners that standing in front of Rachel or G. Atherton, or standing in front of Premier League football squad, they would get destroyed because they can't get their information across in an effective manner.
I completely understand what you mean there, and from my own experiences with lots of different sports over the last couple of years, I think you also seem to be sometimes in situations where it's chaos management, but you have to try and apply some form of order in order to kind of achieve something that you may not initially think is possible to do. But, giving it a go is always a nice thing to be able to do. And I might come back to discuss that with you a bit later about how would you approach that to serious injuries that you've been presented with, and possibly breaking down that approach.
Absolutely. I think it was Duncan French that said it to me. Planned unpredictability. That's kind of what we're in the business of. Sure.
And I can only imagine he's got a lot of planned unpredictability on his plate daily.
It's out there in the UFC, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Okay, well, look, this is another question I'm really interested to ask you, because obviously you've been around for a while and you've seen a lot of things. What would you say your top 3 areas of interest are at the moment in your day-to-day role?
Wow, so to try and nail it to 3 is tricky. I think they probably encompass lots of different areas, but if I tried to think about what I'm really interested in at the moment, it's always about optimising an athlete's or a coach's performance and helping them realise their potential. So I think, having spent the last 6 years in professional football, which was an area that I never thought I would, it's really influencing their perception of strength and power development and how that can actually impact on performance. So that's been a real drive to go into a club where there was no real history of physical preparation, and go from sort of 4 or 5 players in one season lifting to having the whole squad coming through twice a week and following what would resemble a decent strength and conditioning program. So I think
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I was one of those S&C snobs that didn't live in football, lived in Olympic sports and thought that the world was amazing in Olympic sports and football was just a waste of time. And then found myself in football, and actually there's a lot of good work going on, and there's also a lot of work that if you approach it in the right manner, you can have an impact. And I've seen that at club level in the Premier League and the Championship, and also in my role in the age groups at England, seeing the impact that people like Bryce Kavanagh and Ben Rosenblatt are having on the national teams is brilliant. You know, we're probably a generation away from there being a sea change, but it's starting to move in the right direction. So I think looking at simple strategies to put in place that will be effective is one of them. The other links to working with allied professionals. So I think when I first started, there was a lot of conflict between strength and conditioning coaches and physiotherapists. We kind of rocked up as new kids on the block and started saying that we could do all these different things that were traditionally the physio's domain. And I think I've had some of my greatest satisfaction working shoulder to shoulder with the medical profession and helping foster sort of technical models and shared languages within sports, so that we've got a continuity of care all the way through the rehab process, and we're not stabbing each other in the back. We're actually supporting each other as we go through. So I think those are kind of two main areas, and then I guess underpinning all of that again comes back to what I said at the start. Communication and how we put ourselves across as professionals and how we help each other and get those messages out there.
Great stuff. I'd 100% agree with you in terms of working together as a multidisciplinary team. The experiences I've had in cricket, in tennis, and now day to day with doctors and physios and everyone having to be on the same page with stuff is so important, because the athlete can smell it if there's something off, and I think it's important that they're happy that everyone understands that they're trying to help them as one.
Athletes, well, actually coaches as well. Everyone becomes a bush lawyer, and they will look for the answer that they want from all the professionals. And like you say, they will smell it. They'll find the one person that's going to go, well, do you know what? I think that guy's an arse, and that's not the way to go. Whereas if as a team you've got that shared language and you're all signed up to this is how we're doing it, you've got no one unpicking the good work that you're doing. So yeah, absolutely.
So, next question I just wanted to discuss with you. You can come at this as a sports scientist, S&C coach, performance enhancement specialist. What would you say the most valuable things you've learned in your career are so far?
Okay. Well, first of all, those job titles are all the same. It just depends on what organisation you want to work with and who's going to pay you. So,
sure.
People get dead upset about job titles,
yeah.
But honestly, I'll be called whatever I need to be to fulfil the role. But yeah, let's come at it from some other thing. I think the first thing, actually, I was reading a book yesterday by Austin Kleon. I'm a bit of a groupie of his at the moment. Share Your Work, Still Like an Artist, the two of his books, and he talks about in his book being an amateur. And I think I've always been fairly apologetic, or in my own head, about not knowing everything, and everyone else seems like dead clever, like proper brain boxes, and sometimes I'm sat there thinking, gee, I haven't got a freaking clue. But actually in his book he's like, look, be an amateur. We are all amateurs, and it's great, because if you're an amateur, you know that there's gaps in your knowledge, you know that there's things that you need to plug. So you've got much more of an open mindset, more of a beginner's mindset, and I think that's really, really useful. And I've just posted something on Twitter actually, which links into that. But this idea of having strong beliefs, I think we've all got strong beliefs, but we've actually got to hold those quite loosely, so that we are open to change. And I think that comes from having that sort of amateur mindset. I think if you are a pro, or you perceive yourself to be a pro, and your shit doesn't stink, and that you have the answers, you're a bit of a fundamentalist then. And I think there's a few S&C fundamentalists out there in the world of social media. So I think embrace not knowing stuff. Embrace being that specialist generalist. That would be one thing that I've learned and got way more comfortable with. I think the other thing, which probably only dawned on me in recent years, is there's only some certain populations that like to lift. Okay, so Olympic lifters, power lifters, and CrossFitters. They're probably the three weird sets of people that actually lift for the sake of lifting. Every other athlete that you work with lifts because it adds to their sport. My little lad is 7. He's gone on a rugby camp today. He's not gone on a rugby camp so that he can go and bust out sets and reps in the gym. He's gone so he can meet his mates. He can run around like a lunatic, smash a few people if he gets the opportunity to. Just have fun. And I think for too many years as a strength coach, I believe that it was all about the gym and what we were doing in there, and I wasn't making the connections between the sport and the gym, and that's probably why I wasn't as effective as I could have been. And I think now I'm far better at recognising that actually, do you know what, downhill mountain bikers are kind of loose and crazy people and like to do mad, crazy things. I need to accept that, and I need to find how I can connect what I do in the gym with what they're doing out on the bikes. And I think that's the same for every sport. So, keep that at the top of your mind, really, when you're coaching. Sport first and foremost. And then the other thing is, again, this idea of simplicity. Simplicity actually being the key. I was listening to a recording of Ash Jones, who has forged a fantastic career in rugby down in the Southern Hemisphere, and he talks about keeping the programs really simple because the complexity is with the person that you're dealing with. And I think that's become really at the forefront of my mind over the last 2 years working in action sports, that these are complex characters that you're working with. Let's get some simple, strongly held sort of programs that we believe in, that we can execute, and let's spend our time dealing with the complexity of getting that human being to do something probably that they don't want to do, or that's going to push them to their physical limits. So I think, they're probably my 3 key learnings over the years.
Awesome. I completely agree with those, Nick. I think they're fantastic examples. I mean, I've had personal experiences of those too. I think when I first came fresh out of uni and got my UKSCA accreditation, I thought I was the bee's knees, but I then quickly realised that I really did not know anything. So humility was the first thing I think I experienced quite early on. Trying to then, as you alluded to, making sure you can see the bigger picture, and focusing on what really matters. And then the most successes I've had with athletes and teams are just keeping things simple, as you said, and making sure the good things done consistently well and with good quality, you would usually add up to the best results. So yeah, fantastic.
And I've seen that particularly in football, where every week there was a new innovation or a new shiny bit of kit or a new consultant coming in from left field wanting to work with your star player.
Yeah. Where
everything had to be new, everything had to be shiny. And it's like, no, hold on, lads. What you actually need is a thread of consistency through this whole season, because when it gets deep into, December, January, February, and you've got fixture congestion piling up, what you don't need is some dude attaching parachutes to you, running through ladders, doing weird and wonderful things. What you need is just to go back to your bread and butter and work on getting strong, for instance, and getting good at your fundamental lifts, and that will hold you in good stead to then express that out on the pitch. And I think there are too many people that maybe misinterpret some of the work of people like Franz Bosch, who I've got a lot of time for, and a lot of his work is really good. But you do see a lot of people swinging kettlebells off the end of barbells and doing weird and crazy things with athletes that probably have got a training age of about 2 and would benefit probably far more from some basic fundamental movements before going on to that more advanced stuff.
Sure. Couldn't agree more, Nick. Absolutely. Who would you say, like, over your career, like, not necessarily in terms of complete professional disciplines, but personal disciplines as well, who's influenced you the most?
So these are probably really nebulous answers that your listeners are going to hate, because it doesn't direct them to any particular person. But actually, I think it might signpost them to groups of people. So I think first and foremost, my family. And I know that's really American and cheesy, isn't it? But they are key influencers. So decisions that I make regarding my career progression are heavily influenced by my wife and my children. The fact that I live in Newcastle upon Tyne was because of the family. The fact that I will then travel out is because of where we live. So, there are jobs and opportunities that probably have presented themselves to me over the years that selfishly, within a heartbeat, you'd say yes to. Yeah, I want to do that. That is a great opportunity. It's going to be fulfilling for me. And then when you actually step back and think, yeah, but I'm going to be living in Beijing, and whilst I'll be fantastic and fine working all day, my wife and young family are going to be, in an area that's not maybe conducive to a happy lifestyle. Not that there's anything wrong with Beijing, it's lovely, I've been there a few times. But I think, everything first and foremost comes down to the family as to what I'm doing. I think then I would say the athletes that I work with, massive influencers. Again, similar to what you said before. You come out of university and you think you've got all the answers, and you pay lip service to what the athlete tells you. And I think you do that at your peril, because do you know what? Those athletes have probably been competing and training for a decade, 15 years, 20 years. And when they say they know their body, a lot of them do. When they say that they need a certain type of training, maybe that's actually what they do need. So I am far more open and receptive to absorbing what the athlete is saying and trying to work that into their program. And again, if you do that, if you meet your athletes halfway and implement elements that they're sharing with you, they're going to be far more likely to adhere to your program anyway. So I think the athletes I work with, and particularly the last 2 years with the action sports athletes, massively influence the way that I coach, the way that I am. I'm a far more rounded practitioner now, I think, and that's in no small part due to working with the Athertons. And I think finally, which goes kind of alongside it, is the support staff. I'm definitely not the sharpest tool in the box, but I make sure I stand next to all the smart kids. And I think creating your network is super important, and nurturing your network is really important as well. And not from some sort of Machiavellian or selfish reason, but from just you are a product of the people that you knock around with, the books that you read, the situations you put yourself in. And I think it's really important if you surround yourself with good people, then that helps elevate you up as well. So my family, the athletes that I work with, and the support staff, I think they're the key influencers in my life, definitely. Not people on social media, not social media influencers, not those guys.
Well, if only everyone could agree with you there.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I suppose it's a conversation for a different time.
I watched a great Netflix documentary last night about the Fire Festival, about what happens when social influencers promote something that doesn't exist. It was incredible. So, yeah, I'll stick to real world people.
That's the thing. I mean, I've discussed this on previous podcasts with other guests, and it sometimes creates more problems than solutions. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, I completely agree with you, mate. You've got to keep it real and honest to yourself, not get distracted by all the fluff we're surrounded with these days.
Yeah.
Next question: if you needed to find out something that you knew a little bit about, you didn't know that much about at all, or really weren't sure, and you needed an answer to something, where would you go? What are your top 3 resources for new information?
Right, so I'm a big fan of field trips. Which book did I read that in? I'm trying to think which one it was. I think it was the story about Pixar and how they developed as a company, and they send all of their staff on field trips. And the example they give is when they're producing Monsters University, and they packed all their sort of support staff that are going out to be the producers and the editors and the illustrators, and they sent them to a variety of universities throughout America, to Yale and Harvard and all these different sort of establishments, and they just sent them there. And, well, why are we going? And they're like, well, we don't know. But you go in and here's a notebook and you kind of figure it out when you get there. And what they did was immerse themselves in the environment, went to a frat house, spent time in the dining hall, walked the corridors, looked at notice boards, and made notes and observations. And then when they bring that back to their production meetings, actually it gives you a layer of information and authenticity in the film that then when we watch it, if we've been to university, we go, yeah, actually that's what it looks like, that's what it feels like, and you only get that by being on a field trip. So I think if there's more information that I want to know, I still do go to conferences and workshops, but I tend to spend my CPD budget, which comes out of my pocket, I tend to spend that more on going and spending time with people and standing on their shoulders and watching what they do, So last year, spending time with Dan Howes, with the England Rugby Sevens lads, and just kind of going with an idea of what I wanted to get out of it, but then coming away with so much more. And I try and do that as much as possible. And then that kind of leads you down another, you see what they're doing, and then they tell you where their influences were, and you can kind of follow those threads. So I think I like spending time with people and seeing what they actually do, because it's very hard to fake it on a field trip. Whereas when you stand up in front of a conference, you get a lot of people that present the perfect scenario, and you're like, like bullshit. There's no way that's what you do at that club or at that organisation. Let me come and spend a day with you. I want to see how you actually interact and how it actually works. So field trips would be my number one. Then I'm kind of old school. I like books. I'm got the reading speed of 1,000 snails, so I find it very difficult. I'm learning how to gut books. One of a friend has sort of put me onto this idea, so I'm trying to read quicker and kind of gut the books for the key information. And then Audible is amazing for me, especially now that last week I discovered the times 1.5 speed button. And some of my long commutes that I have in and out of work each week, I will, on most journeys, listen to Audible. And not always, I'll still tune into radio and listen to Spotify. I'm not a complete nerd, but so I like my books. And journals, again, I find it difficult. Again, I'll gut the journal articles, and I'll go sort of methods and conclusions,
Sure.
and practical applications. Standard issue.
Yeah.
And then if there's something interesting there, try and contact the person that wrote it and speak to them. So it goes back to that field trip. And then social media can be a really good place to sort of alert you to new research articles. I think Twitter probably is one of the best places for that. I think you get a lot of professionals sharing their latest before print journal article or current findings, and obviously you've got your guys that condense information like Chris Beardsley and Jan Lemur. I think that stuff's good. I think there might be a danger for some practitioners just to look at that, and that's not actually research. So a Jan Lemur infographic is not actually research, it's just an infographic. You still need to probably go away and look at the original source and delve into it. But certainly to alert you to what's out there, and the path to go and have a further look, social media can be really good. But yeah, social media is not necessarily science, so that's a key one for the millennials coming through.
You just made me giggle because I spend a lot of time with teenage athletes, as you know, and that they always like to try and find a shortcut, don't they? And it just makes me giggle because sometimes they think I've got the answer, and I'm like, okay, well let's hear it then. And then as soon as they start telling me, they kind of like look down at the floor and think, actually, no, I really don't think I do. So yeah, you've got to be careful where you get resources. The thing I find, Nick, is that it's such the world today, especially with how busy everyone is just having the time to kind of, time is valuable, and like being able to dedicate it to good periods of investment, really, with trying to find out new things.
Yeah.
But yes, it's difficult. It is difficult.
I think sometimes I feel guilty as well because people are like, "Oh, have you listened to this podcast? Have you listened to that? Or have you read this?" And I'm like, "Gee, no, I haven't looked at any of that." And that's not me suggesting that I know it all. Definitely don't. It's just you do have to be selective about what you're looking at, who you're listening to, and there's actually good information there to be had. So yeah, you've got to choose your sources wisely. And at different periods of your career, you're going to be more into one type of information than another. And I think, listening to Pete Atkinson's podcast he did for you recently, I think he said it quite nicely in there that there's different points in your career, and I think where he was at with Italian rugby is not necessarily getting more information, it's just consolidating the information he's already got and putting that into a workable framework. And I think that's, sometimes we feel that we've just got to gather information, and it's like, actually at some point you need to consolidate that information into your system and your framework to work. I think that's the key.
The other thing I remember him saying was he was spending most of his time trying to learn Italian, which is pretty important when you're working in Italy, because if you might have all the information in the world, but if you can't communicate with people and they don't understand you, it's going to be pretty difficult. So this next question drives everyone mad because it's such a difficult question to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And you can apply this to any kind of scenario, sport, or time span you want. But like, if you had to choose 3 sports performance exercises and or drills which you found make athletes better, what would they be?
Squats fix everything. There you go. That's upset loads of people. Sorry, that was very tongue. They do fix quite a lot of things though as well. I think it's difficult to go to a particular exercise or drill. What I would say is categories. So I am a big fan of force production. So like, again, spending time in football, the lads just need to get stronger. They were weak as water. So let's get you stronger. And I'm pretty confident that if I can make you a stronger person in the gym, that there's good evidence that you're going to be more powerful, and if you're more powerful, we have a chance of then you expressing that out on the pitch if we connect the dots correctly. So I first and foremost will think about force production. Once we've done that, contrary to popular belief, you can go wrong with getting strong. I think I then look at the application of that force. So, okay, how strong is strong enough? And now let's look at, and this kind of links into Franz Bosch's work of contextual variability. So now we've got your stable movements. Let's build in some variability and variation into that stable movement. And for the majority of athletes that I work with, in fact, probably for all the athletes that I work with, I'm not talking about the advanced stuff that you would see typically in his material. The athlete that I've got are not that physically well prepared. So, but I am taking the concepts of movement variability and dynamic systems theory and applying it in very small doses, so that the athletes are better at applying that force. And I think I saw that when I transitioned and started working with the downhillers, where they were strong, very strong. That lent itself to some issues in terms of injuries, but also I was like, well, there comes a point when you actually got to be able to apply that strength, and yours is not about max force production. What you've got to do, it's about being able to apply a percentage of that force within specific time frames at certain points on that race run. So why are we spending loads of time trying to get a 1RM through the roof? Let's look at how we apply that load. So I like force production, then couple that with your force application. And I guess if I was at a starting point, and I'm conscious of like the groups that you work with, the younger athletes, like anything body weight. Can the athlete handle their body weight? Can they squat, lunge, pull, press, do all of those things? And I'm not talking about mad, crazy calisthenics and everyone doing handstand push-ups, because I think, well, that's great. You can do a handstand push-up, whoopee. Does that necessarily improve performance? What I'm saying is like the fundamental movements. Can you handle your body weight? If you can, then you can start to slide under a bar and load that movement. So I think they're my three. It's a bit of a cop-out, Ryan, because it's not specific exercises, but hopefully it's like families of exercises that are important.
Sure. No, that's an awesome answer. No, thanks for that. And as you know, I'm sure you may have seen on the Extreme Sports Performance YouTube channel and the website that all of the exercises that I like to promote and use are category-based, just because it's such a difficult question to answer, and you need to be armed with a menu really to make the recipe, because every athlete requires different ingredients, don't they? Yeah. So
squats will work for everything though. That's the only other.
I'll move on. But I do love a squat, and I'm up until about 2 years ago shocked at how many teenage boys in the UK can't squat without looking like a piece of wet spaghetti or drunk flamingo. Because they're too busy probably on their iPhones, iPads, or sitting down.
Well, and also being influenced by social media influencers saying squats are bad and everyone should do single leg work, which again is a polarisation of opinions. And I think we have to be very careful about polarising opinions. And I always get nervous about people that try and do that on social media or in real life, because it is not opposite ends of the spectrum. There is always a level of grey, and absolutely single leg work can be awesome and really effective, but actually sliding under a bar and doing a big old back squat can also be very useful in terms of force production. So watch out for those really shouty people that polarise opinions on social media.
Sure. This alludes really nicely to the next question, actually, Nick. And you may have touched upon a few of these things at the start, but for undergraduates or aspiring sports scientists, strength and conditioning coaches, people looking to get into this profession, what would you say your top pieces of advice would be for them?
Say yes. I said this one before. Say yes and then figure it out. I can think of numerous occasions where I've been asked to do something, whether it's a presentation, work with a particular sport, join a new team, and you're thinking, have I got that in my locker?
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Can I do that? Do you know what? Say yes. Say yes. What that then tends to do is focus your attention and forces you to get good at that. It's very easy to stay within a sport or within an environment that you're always used to. So when opportunities present themselves, go for it. Try and make sure you're as well prepared as possible. And then if you do that, if you've got the opportunity and you're well prepared, then you'll be successful. So say yes is a key one. I think kind of linked to that is learn to take a punch, which again comes from Austin Kleon's book. I wish I could have come up with that one myself, but you're going to get knockbacks. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to be told that you're not very good, that you're not going to get hired. That's all it is. Learn to take a punch. You'll get knocked down. Just get back up again and go for it again. I think that's really, really important. I think it's too easy to think that, well, I graduate, therefore I have 4 years under my belt, I shall walk into the best job in the world straight off the bat. You're going to get loads of knockbacks. And even sort of 22 years deep into a career, I still get knockbacks. I still get opportunities that's like, not for you, Nick. And you've just got to dust yourself off and crack on. So, yeah, say yes, learn to take a punch, pay it forward, which is a very American thing to say, but again, I think it goes back to what I said before about creating a network and nurturing that network is really important, and I think it's important to pay it forward. I've been very lucky to have various mentors and people helping me and guiding me over the years, and I like to try and do the same with people, whether it's sending them a book that I've read and just going, I think you'd like this, and little tokens like that, or spending some time with them over a coffee. I think there are colleagues in our profession that are arseholes and that won't do that and don't share their time and don't pay it forward. I think they're in the minority. I think the vast majority, if you ask them in the right way for some time and help and support, they will help and guide you, because we've all needed a leg up as we've pursued our career. So I think paying it forward and getting those connections is really important. And then a final one, which gives me 4, is this idea of a work-life balance is an absolute myth. And the reason why I believe it's a myth is because if you try and balance both, you'll do a crappy job at both, and your boss at work won't be happy, and your partner or friends and family won't be happy. What you have to accept is that at different parts of your career and at different stages in your life and during the year, you will have times of huge imbalances, where, for instance, you may be under the pump and doing a lot of work and not really seeing your mates and your friends and your partner. And that's not sustainable. So what you then have to do is work in a time when you flip that and have a period of imbalance in the other way, where you just have time where you spend it with your friends and family and recreational stuff. So I think if you can do that, and that's something that I've, again, worked hard on, as I've progressed through my career, is when I'm at home, I'm at home. And apart from working with the downhillers, and my family know that when I'm working with them and it's in season, my phone will stay on during the weekend because bad things happen at their races. But by and large, everyone else, the phone is off. I'm at home with my family. It can wait till Monday. And wow, we shouldn't say that in sport, should we? Because everything's dead urgent and dead time precious. But I think, if you try and do both things equally, you just do a poor job at both. I think, except I know when I used to work at the University Institute of Sport, coming up to an Olympics or a major championship, you would be under the pump. working hard, long hours, and really putting everything you could into it, because you knew that when that athlete went off to a training camp and then competed Olympics, your day would be a lot quieter and a lot easier, and you could relax a bit more. So I think it's looking for that light and shade. Don't go for the grey in between stuff when it comes to work-life balance.
Awesome advice, awesome points. Thanks for your honesty there. I think they're really valuable nuggets for people to take away with them. So, Nick, conscious of time, I just wanted to squeeze a couple more questions in for you, because I know you've got some stuff coming up today. What would you say your typical day would be, or a typical day would look like with your downhill mountain bikers?
With the mountain bikers, unpredictable.
Yeah.
It usually revolves around multiple WhatsApp messages coming in, changing the venue, the day, the training time, what we're going to do, and who we're going to do it with. That's painting a very poor picture of them. Actually, they're not that unorganised. It really depends, Ryan, on what they need, and the riders themselves are very different. So the way I work and interact with Rachel is probably very different to the way I work and interact with G. The types of conversations, the way that I structure the session will differ, because they are two very different characters. But I'm trying to think what it would typically look like. It's a really difficult one to
Sure.
pin down. Have you got any sort of specifics that you were...
Yeah, well, I mean, I know it's a difficult question. I've asked you quite a few of those today, but I just wanted to I suppose, give the listeners an idea of what kind of stuff you might be doing with them, like maybe in a gym setting, or possibly in a rehab setting, or maybe on the outdoors on their bikes or something like that.
Yeah, so I think gym setting, there's always what we call it special conditioning.
Right.
That's basically anything that's keeping them held together. So it's your more remedial work. There'll be a bunch of exercises that are specific to Rach and G, given the nature of their injuries that they've had over the years and in more recent seasons. So they're kind of stuff that you need to do it to get them either onto the bike or under the bar. So we'll do that. That sort of kicks the session off. There will always be a strength component, and it will change as the season moves through. But I think in general we've moved away from a just getting strong for the sake of it, and I've tried to steer them more towards like applying that force. How much force do you actually need to put down at the start hut, and then 2 or 3 times during the race itself. And then we would have a component that addresses the energy systems, and we do that. We break that up into a number of different sort of components, where you would have your standard sort of road work, which gives you your underpinning fitness, and I think that's really important. I know it's like a 3 to 5 minute race run, but actually the ability to cope with track walks, qualifications, practice runs, and then the runs itself, and then pack up and move on to the next course, that requires your ability to recover. So I think general underpinning aerobic fitness is important. So they'll certainly, at this time of year, there'll be a block of that taking place out on the roads and on the sort of trails, just general sort of conditioning. And then as the season comes in, we switch that up, where we will be looking at shorter, sharper interval type work, as well as I do some course simulation work, where we try and simulate the course that we're going to be riding on in the next couple of weeks, as well as some hybrid exercises sessions where we try and fatigue metabolically the peripheral, so the musculoskeletal system, as well as then fatiguing central, so that we get both peripheral adaptations and central adaptations. And that goes back to the sort of work by Martin Bashai, looking at his work on energy system development. So we'll have a bunch of that. And then there is always just a whole host of chats and discussions, probably more so with Rach than G. But yeah, I think actually some of the some of the most insightful and useful sessions have been when Rachel and I have gone for a ride on the road for an hour, just chatting, or out on one of her favourite trails. That's when you get a chance to chat over what's coming up in the next week, month, rest of the season. And it's probably a little bit different to some of the other riders because of where they're at in their career. They're both in probably the twilight of their career. So it's getting the most out of athletes that have already achieved a significant amount and also carry a lot of mileage in terms of injuries, but who have both still got points to prove.
Awesome. I found that fascinating. I've worked with a couple of sprint BMXers last year, and every day was a different day. Yeah. And every day I'd see them, someone would have a new injury. Because obviously everyone knows you fall off a bike at a high speed, it doesn't usually end well. Yeah. And they don't really like wearing that much protective gear because it's it just affects the way that they ride. So their bodies do take quite a punishment. So it's pretty awesome, but it's brutal. And I can imagine getting the balance is tricky.
Yeah, and I think that, there's always ongoing discussions. Certainly when we get deep into the season and it's where I've had to get better at balancing what I need you to do, so the vegetables, as opposed to the pudding, what they want to do. And we will have a constant each season, and I know it will come around about April this season, where the dialogue will be, I'm over it, Nick, I'm over this program, this session, and I will go back and say, and sometimes you push back and say, yeah, fair comment, but there's these two elements that need to stay in. And we can play around with the other stuff, but there's some things that we have to hold our strong beliefs on. We usually get over those conversations relatively quickly, but it always comes.
Brilliant, happy days. Well, look, I'm going to leave it there and let you go. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for everything that you've shared with everyone today. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how can they get hold of you? Where can they find you?
So I've got a website which is nickgrantham.com, so they can find us there. I am on Twitter, which is Coach Nick G, and I've got Instagram, which is 0226. That's ZERO and then the 22 and 6. And then if they want, they can always get a copy of the Strength and Conditioning Bible if they wanted to get a feel for how I approach things with the athletes I work with. Cool,
and you can get that on your website?
You can get it via a website or just go straight to Amazon and it's available on there. Yeah.
Awesome, cool. I'll put links to all those in the show notes, so for all those listening, you can just click straight on the links and go straight to it. Nick, just stay on the line quickly whilst I stop the recording, but just want to say thanks again for your time, mate, and speak soon.
Thank you very much for inviting me on, Ryan.
Thanks for listening to the 14th episode. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please leave us a rating and or review on whichever platform you're listening on. Please check out our website, www.extremesportsperformance.com. On our media page, we have weekly blogs that include Thought of the Week, Exercise of the Week, Recipe of the Week, and Training Song of the Week. Each month's collection gets compiled into our monthly newsletter along with company service and store updates. You can sign up for free to receive this via our subscribe page. Our online store consists of training programs, online and in-person coaching, nutrition plans, toolbox, and interactive training systems. Please follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Links to these can be found at the bottom of every page on our website or via any search engine. That's all for now. Until next time, take care.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No